Good day. It's Tuesday, May the 30th. I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research, and we've got CEO Steve Dalton of Revolve Renewable Power joining us. Revolve just released their March Q3 fiscal 2023 financial results, and Steve is here to discuss them. Please remember, this is neither recommendation nor advice. We're here to learn about the company. Steve, thanks a lot for joining us. The evolution of Revolve from a project developer to an energy producer continues. And you've got financial results here showing that with your revenues growing as more of your projects come online. Why don't you give us an overview on what the quarter looked like?
Yeah, great to talk to you again, Martin. I appreciate you taking the time as always. I guess the kind of high level numbers for us for this quarter show, I guess when we discussed it back in the last time, we called it our kind of business model in action, but that was really about the DG business specifically. I think what you've seen from us this quarter is the benefit of the deal that we done with Engie back in January, now starting to feed into our financials. So we've hit revenue of over $1 million year to date, which is a great result. Obviously only the start of where we want to go. And that's been a combination of both the kind of recurring long-term revenue from our DG portfolio and our first milestone payment, or at least only a part of the first milestone payment that we received from Engie back in January when we completed the sale of that Bouse and Parker Solar projects. So that's kind of the key thing at a kind of financial level. Obviously a huge amount going on within the business, kind of generally speaking. You've seen us double the size of our DG pipeline, now stands at 156 megawatts, which is fantastic. That's given us a whole lot of other new opportunities to potentially convert those projects into actually construction and obviously operating assets. We started to see the start. Sorry, go
and
ahead.
Steve, sorry, when you say DG, that's distributed generation projects, and those as opposed to the utility scale ones, and these are projects you're developing yourself, and you there's a good chance you may sell them off, but you're going to operate themselves and make the profits off of selling the electricity, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we currently have a portfolio of just under 3 megawatts of those types of assets, all rooftop solar, some CHP. We just announced in the last week or two that we've fully commissioned our 3.2 megawatt battery storage project down in Mexico. So that portfolio at the moment sits at around 6 megawatts. We've got PPAs in place for those projects, which I think there's an average life of around 9 years still remaining at fixed prices. So we can look forward for the next 9 years and have a reasonably good view of what the recurring revenue line from that portfolio is going to be. And then, like I think we've explained before, the kind of business model is to continue to add more projects to that pipeline. And that's where this 156 megawatt number that I mentioned is important for us, because that gives us a lot of different opportunities within that pipeline to add to that 6 megawatts of kind of operating and recurring assets.
And just to clarify, the Mexican battery deal you just announced, the financial result from that operating, those are not in these Q3 financial results. Those only hit in your fiscal Q4, which is you have a June year end, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Now, we only officially announced the final commissioning of the project last week. I think in reality, there have been parts of that project which have been revenue generating for the last couple of months.
Oh, okay.
But the bulk of it will be in Q4 starting, and obviously then there's a 10-year agreement around that project. So you're going to be expecting kind of revenue quarter on quarter as we go forward.
Yeah, most of these, at least I know solar projects typically expect to have asset life of 20 to 30 years, and that you've got 10-year PPAs with them. Is it typically expected the same client will roll over and you just renegotiate new prices, or just who knows what the world looks like in 10 years?
Yeah, exactly that. Like it'll be a bit of a mixed bag. Like some of the way the previous deals were structured as part of the Centrica deal that we done. Didn't have an ability to kind of roll forward, so they are fixed term contracts. Obviously, a lot of the newer transactions that we're looking at now do have an ability to roll over, assuming the customer wants to do that. In terms of our financial modeling and how we kind of approach our investment return on those, it's looking at just the period in question in terms of the contracted revenue that we've managed to secure.
All right. And your DG pipeline is up to 100 and call it 57 megawatts. And how much of that do you expect roughly to convert into sort of power revenue generating projects, let's say, I don't know, over the next year or over some period of time?
Well, I'd like to say all of it, but there's a lot of projects within that pipeline, and I mean, you do have projects that may drop out. You do have more projects that come in, but I think certainly in terms of that number, those projects will be, let's say, vetted first before they even get into our pipeline. So these are projects where we've actually received a lot of information from a client. We've analyzed their kind of demand profile. We've maybe put a technical proposal together, put that in front of the client. So these are kind of very active projects where we're kind of constantly engaging with clients. Very hard to tell, obviously, how many get converted. You're certainly targeting a high rate. I think what we can say now is currently we have, I think it's around 32 megawatts of kind of capacity where we've issued letters of intent to clients. So clients have told us, yeah, listen, we're interested in moving forward. We've issued letters of intent. We're waiting for them to be signed. So once they're signed, then you're kind of into then the formal kind of execution mode, if you like, of trying to get them delivered. So I think we've got reasonable kind of near-term visibility on some of those projects, but it does move around. I think that the most satisfying thing from our perspective is we've been able to take on that Centrica business and been able to kind of grow it in terms of pipeline up to, I think when we last reported, as at the end of the last quarter, it was around 60 odd gigawatts. I think when we actually reported a quarter results, it got up to around 70 something. So within the space of 3 months, we've been able to double that again. So we're finding the opportunities in the market. Okay, the challenge is then to convert them. So that's where kind of these LOIs that we've issued are kind of an important indicator that we're now starting to see that conversion of opportunities into actually live projects.
All right. And I'm just noticing here, you at the beginning of the year, call it, you had 3.6, I get converted on your utility scale projects, gigawatts, I believe, of development portfolio. And then you sold off 1.25 to the NG. And then you've added a little bit back into it with Greenfield and changes. So you're still at 2.8 gigawatts of portfolio development on your utility scale.
Yeah, exactly. And we've laid out some of this information on kind of some supplemental presentation that we provided in conjunction with our results this quarter. Obviously, our overall aim is to continue building the utility scale. I think when we listed the business last year, we put an aim there of 5 gigawatts. So that's kind of what we're working towards. Obviously, as we sell assets, we need to kind of backfill capacity and new opportunities. That's what this quarter you've seen us do. So we obviously sold 1.25 gigawatts to NG back in January. We've now added around 480 megawatts of new potential greenfield projects. The US market is extremely competitive, so you're looking to find the right opportunities. It's just not a case of kind of adding new projects for the sake of growing the number. We're looking to put projects on the books that we can actually think we can deliver to get to ready to build. So we're going to continue to look for those opportunities as each quarter goes by. As you say, we currently stand around 2.8 gigawatts. So there's a number of good projects in here for us to work on.
Yeah, I'm looking at that supplemental information. I see one of your projects, the EI-24. It says it's in late stage development. Would that mean roughly 12 months, or is that within a year kind of time frame until it gets the sort of the ready that doesn't mean it's in would mean until it gets into sort of the green light to go ahead with the project, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the ultimate aim is to get a project ready to build, so you can actually then go put a commercial structure around it, get some financing, and go and build the project. So that's ultimately where we're looking to get all these projects to. I think in terms of the Alvente Quattro projects specifically, it's been late stage for a while. Obviously, the Mexican market has been slow in the last couple of years in terms of moving through permitting, but we've been working on this project for a number of years. So there's a huge amount of work already completed in terms of wind resource campaign, your basic engineering. A number of the kind of environmental permitting applications are sitting waiting to get approved. So a huge amount of work gone into that project over the last number of years. We're hopeful that over the next 12, 15 months that you will see that project get ready to build. So that's certainly the focus at the moment. We have a couple of other projects that will probably reach a similar stage around a similar time, even though in this spreadsheet they're only down as, or in this table they're only down as mid-stage. So the Vernal project we're making good progress on, the Primus wind projects in the US as well. We're certainly have them earmarked to hopefully get to ready to build next year. So we're pushing quite hard on those projects.
And unlike the distributed generation, these projects are maybe not exactly like the NG deal announced earlier in the year, but you're not going to be raising the hundreds of millions of dollars to develop them. You're going to be sort of partnering that off to large partners who will do the actual project financing and development work, right?
I think what you're going to see us do is assess each project as it comes along. I mean, I think we've laid out our kind of overall strategy fairly clearly, and that we're looking to be an owner and operator of renewable assets, both in the US and Mexico. That means even some of these utility scale ones, we need to have a target and an aim to try to be holding some of these for our own book. Obviously, you need to assess each project as it comes along. So we'll never kind of commit to one strategy or another for any of these. But certainly when you look at 100 megawatts, or even the Vernal project at 80 megawatts, or the Primus at 50, they're projects that certainly we have the capacity internally to be able to bring them all the way through, arrange the construction and the financing around it, particularly in the US, I think, where you have the benefit of the tax equity scheme, which is pretty attractive from a developer perspective in terms of getting projects into construction and built.
All right. And in terms of project development, there's been a ton of news everywhere about interest rates and volatility there. Has how are, and I'm curious, how are the green bond markets and the funding markets for the green energy renewable space right now? Can you give us a little commentary on what the financing side of the market looks like?
Yeah, well, obviously we're not at a stage of of going out and raising debt for these utility scale projects yet, but I think a lot of the commentary around interest rates is really at the short end of the curve, whereas projects like these are raising capital over a long period of time, 10, 15 years historically. And the back end of the curve certainly has not gone up as much, may have even inverted in some cases. So you're not seeing that volatility at the back end of the curve, which is typically where you would be raising certainly senior debt for these types of projects. Obviously, in the case of our DG business, there has been a small tick up in, I think, in interest rates. You would have seen that between the loan that we would have raised from RE royalties last August for the Centric acquisition versus the battery storage project, but it was kind of 1 or 2%. It wasn't kind of huge increases.
Gotcha. But the appetite for, and obviously it does get reflected in the rates, there is still strong demand for funding renewable energy projects?
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just consistent with what you're seeing right across the sector, be it in Canada, the US, even in Mexico. I mean, there's just a huge demand and interest in getting involved in financing renewable projects, particularly projects that are ready to build. So I think that has to be the target for us, get them to ready to build, and then you'll have the options in terms of monetizing the asset and selling them, similar to what we've done with the 2 projects to Engie, or raising tax equity and project financing to get the projects built.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of, you're a small microcap story, and there are a lot of companies out there that are needing to raise capital to just operate on a basis. You've done this NG deal where you've received $800,000. No, sorry, you've received $2 million, only recognized $800,000 of that. So we're going to see some revenue recognition of the remainder of that. But with that $2 million received, there is no requirement for you to go to the market to raise equity just on an operational basis or that sort of a thing. The only equity money you'd need to raise is strictly on a project basis. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at that NG deal, and again, a lot of it does depend on the success of the projects, so it's always caveated by that. But I think our expectation, and I think we would have said this when we announced the deal originally, was that we would expect further milestone payments to be received in addition to the $2 million over the next 12 months. So that's always one let's say, avenue of capital that we have available to us. Obviously, we have some recurring revenue as well, very high margins within the DG portfolio that we have, notwithstanding the fact that we have to service some interest to the RE royalty loans. So we have a few different kind of revenue sources within the company to kind of keep us funded going forward. You are right in that the majority of the capital we will ever need to raise will be for projects specifics, let's say, where we're actually going and looking to build and operate projects.
All right. Okay. And I think we've hit the high points here. Is there anything you'd like to further discuss about the quarter or about the upcoming quarters or the market perspective that you'd like to bring up before we wrap it up here?
No, I think much like I probably said that the last quarter. I think the quarters going forward is going to be more of the same for us. Hopefully, just doing a lot more of it in terms of you've seen Q2 deliver the kind of first bit of revenue coming from the DG business. This quarter now we have that combined revenue coming from the sale of the utility scale projects plus the DG. We've now brought on this battery storage project in Mexico. We expect to start construction on another small solar project in Mexico again, hoping to convert some of these other LOIs that we have. So it's going to be hopefully more of the same, and that revenue cash flow continuing to build quarter on quarter. I think on the utility scale, as we move through this year as well, we'll hopefully start to hit some of those development milestones on those kind of projects I mentioned that are moving pretty quickly, the Vernal, the Primus, maybe some good news coming out of Mexico on the Alvente Quattro project. So yeah, it's like we always say, when you have a portfolio like we do, where you've kind of got a number of the big utility scale projects and then you've got a lot happening on the DG side, there's just going to be a lot happening generally within the company. And I think particularly when you look at it quarter on quarter.
All right. With that, then, Steve, thank you very much for taking the time and giving us an update on your quarterly results. Your Q4 always takes a little while longer, so with your June year end, I guess that'll be in September or something when we get your next financial statements coming out. Then it'll be a bit of a wait here.
Yeah, something around that. Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Steve. Talk to you soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much, man.